for those who are joining from outside Europe, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Shannon Seban, and I'm the Director of European Affairs at the Combat Antisemitism Movement. And I'm truly pleased to welcome you to this high-level briefing, How is the Iran conflict reshaping Europe? And we are now meeting at a critical moment. Global power dynamics are shifting rapidly. The Iranian regime is facing growing internal and external pressure, and the consequences of this instability are increasingly visible far beyond the region, including here in Europe. And one of the most concerning consequences we are witnessing is, of course, the sharp rise in anti-Semitism directly linked to these geopolitical tensions. I just would like, before we start, share a few key figures from our latest data. Since January 1st, 2026, the Combat Antisemitism Movement has monitored over 1,400 anti-Semitic incidents worldwide, with an average of 126 incidents per week. But just last week alone, 181 incidents were recorded, which is 44% higher than the weekly average. And at the end, these numbers are not abstract. They reflect, of course, a growing reality in our society. They show what's happening in Iran, and the broader regional tensions are having direct and tangible consequences in Europe and beyond. And today, for this webinar, we will explore three quick questions with our speaker. How should Europe respond to the current situation? What leverage does the European Union actually have? And how can we address the broader consequences, including the rise of anti-Semitism? But before we begin, please note that you will have also the opportunity to ask questions throughout the discussion via the chat, and we will do our best to address them during the session. I am honored also to be joined today by three outstanding speakers: Andrey Kovatchev, member of the European Parliament from Bulgaria and member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, bringing a key institutional and geopolitical perspective. Thank you, MEP, for joining us today. Shaparak Saleh, Franco-Iranian lawyer and co-founder of Femme Azadi, actively engaged in advocating for women's rights and democratic change in Iran. Thank you, Shaparak. Natalie Sanandaji, Nova Festival survivor, as well as Iranian and Jewish, whose personal story offers a powerful and deeply human perspective on identity, conflict, and anti-Semitism. Thank you all for being with us. First, MEP Andrey Kovatchev, let me start with you. From a European Parliament perspective, what concrete tools does the EU have to put pressure on the Iranian regime?
First of all, thank you very much for the possibility to join you. And this is an extremely important topic, which is in the core interest of a democratic and free Europe to support the democratic movement and the democratic forces in Iran. Extremely valuable people, the old opposition of Iran, which is trying for decades to remove this barbaric regime, which is killing tens of thousands of Iranians. But we in Europe and in our resolutions of the European Parliament always say that the future of Iran should be in the hands of the Iranian citizens, of the Iranian people. They are proud people with very long, for century-old statehood, and they have a great traditions in their history. So they deserve a free, secular, and democratic Iran as soon as possible. And this free, secular, and democratic Iran is of a high value for the whole region and for the whole world. Because the tyranny and the barbaric regime currently in Tehran, still there, is supporting terrorist networks in the whole Middle East and beyond. Also in European Union, you mentioned this extremely dangerous development of, you say incidents, but they are violence acts against Jewish people in many countries in Europe, which is raising. And this is not only because of this terrorist network, but also because of disinformation and misuse of the feelings of many people to be on the side of the weaker people, of victims, and presenting Iran as a victim of aggression, presenting the Palestinian organizations like Hamas as organization for liberation of Palestinians, and very worrying that universities, not only in the United States, but also here in Brussels and in Belgium and in Western European countries, including, I was a bit shocked, including to hear also in my country, in Bulgaria, that in the University of Sofia, there's such a movement coming from outside to present manipulative history that is raising anti-Semitism. You ask what we can do. Okay, European Parliament can do resolutions, and we have done many resolutions related to condemning the regime of the mullahs and requesting democracy, stopping repression, stopping executions. We will have mid of April, by invitation of the Foreign Relations Committee, meeting with different opposition groups from Iran, from outside Iran, and from very difficult from inside Iran, but opposition groups who have connections with the resistance inside Iran, including the son of the Shah, including the women of Iran who received, by the way, the European Parliament Prize for Freedom and Peace. This is the Sakharov Prize. And we would like to provide our full solidarity with all the movements of the brave Iranian people who would like to live again in a democratic, secular, and prosperous Iran. And one other issue, which is also very much speculating, especially of some political movements from the left and extreme left in Europe, is about the actions of Israel and the United States. We have good contacts in Lebanon, for example, and the Lebanese people are very happy that they finally have a possibility of peace and democracy in Lebanon, also a great country which deserve to have peaceful development and removal of the Hezbollah terrorist cells and groups of Lebanon is of highly interest of the big majority of the Lebanese people. So that cannot be the interpretation that the actions of the United States and Israel is some kind against the citizens of the majority of the citizens of Lebanon and the majority of the citizens of Iran. This is of the beginning my thoughts. For sure, officially, you see the Council conclusions that we do as European Union member states, and the European Union is not part of the war. Mm-hmm. We would like to see a democratic Iran. We support the democratization of Iran, but officially, member states of the European Union are not participating in the actions there. But we need to combat anti-Semitism and the cause of the anti-Semitism. Yes, we are for the two-state solution, and we support also the United Nations resolutions on which base the Board of Peace was established. I'm also happy with my dear colleague Nikolai Mladenov now as a High Representative of for Gaza. And I hope that this technocratic Palestinian authority, which is built under the leadership of Nikolai, will bring indeed possibility to develop a peaceful development also in Gaza, and the disarmament of Hamas. This is extremely important. That this step of the United Nations Security Council resolution is fulfilled, and we see a full disarmament of Hamas.
Thanks a lot, MEP Kovatchev. So that's very helpful in order to better understand what can be the role and how can Europe definitely can play a role. We can see that, for example, the European Union has decided to adopt a resolution in order to recognize like the RAGC as a terrorist organization that would enable to freeze assets and so on. So that's also helpful at some point to see that at the European level, we do have some tools in order to fight against this. I will now move to Shaparak to another question. Shaparak, from your perspective, I remind everyone that you have co-founded an organization which is amazing. I'm working with in France, Femme Azadi, and you are advocating for years now for democratic change in Iran. To better understand, for those who are listening to us, how fragile is the Iranian regime today, and how we are really witnessing a potential turning point? Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shannon, for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be with all of you today to give the perspective of the Iranian people. So the purpose of our organization is to discuss with Iranians in Iran and to obtain, their feedback as to what's happening there and what they want, which is not obviously very easy lately due to the internet interruptions. But we have still managed to be in touch. And so basically what we try to do is be their voice here in France and throughout Europe. And based on the discussions we've been having with people inside of Iran, their perception is not that what is happening with the United States and Israel is a war. This is not the perception inside Iran. The perception inside Iran is that this is a response to a cry for help. This is what the Iranian people were asking for. They were asking for help because they tried to stand up for their rights many times, as Mr. Kovatchev was saying earlier. Many times since 1979, they have tried to fight for their rights on their own. And they have never been successful because they are facing one of the worst dictatorships that this world has ever known. And so the latest episode of that was on the 8th and 9th of January this year, where, peaceful protesters arose and tried to be heard about complaints they had, which concerned the economic situation, but also the absence of fundamental rights in Iran. And the response to that was more killing, more rape, more torture. And so really what Iranians realized then, and we don't have the exact figures yet, but we know that we're talking about 4,000 people at least killed over a 2-day period. I mean, they just realized they would not manage to get rid of that regime on their own, and therefore immediately thereafter they started begging for help, begging for US and Israeli intervention. And so the perception in Iran is that the response that has been received is exactly that, a response to that cry for help. Now, the war has been going on, call it a war because this is how it's labeled, but it's been going on for about 4 weeks, a little less than 4 weeks. And to this day, it's been doing a very efficient job at targeting the regime. Obviously, we all know that that Khamenei, the father, was the first target, and there were many targets thereafter from the top ranks of the regime. And this is exactly what the Iranians wanted. They wanted someone to help them get rid of those who had killed their children. But the reality is today that there are two major concerns that we are still facing. One of them is that not the entire system has been put down. There are still survivors, some of whom their names were mentioned as being those with whom the discussions were taking place. I will just mention one, Ghalibaf, who's the head of parliament in Iran. This is a person who's particularly despised by the Iranian people because he's one of the people who had decided that young Iranians who were celebrating at parties, because obviously it's forbidden to celebrate at parties in Iran back years ago, had to be thrown down from buildings. This is the kind of person that apparently the rulers of this world are considering to have discussions with. And so that's where the Iranians get very, very concerned, because we're saying, no, what the help we asked for was not to replace one by the other. The cry for help was for a regime change. And so for the regime change to occur, you need to go to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem has not been attained yet. And the 15 principles that have been shared by Donald Trump today would not enable the Iranian people to get to their objective, which is that of a secular democracy. And so that's one of the major concerns. And the second major concern is that those operations that are taking place should be targeted towards the regime and to destroying the regime, but not destroying Iran, because that's where the very thin line is. If you start targeting, essential needs of Iranians like the hydrocarbons or electricity, that becomes extremely tricky for Iranians because, we need to be able to rebuild a strong Iran afterwards. And so it's really sad from an Iranian's perspective to see that at the moment, basically Europe is just watching this from afar and not playing any concrete role. So yes, there was listing of the IRGC, which took place, but Europe's learning curve, and I'm not directing this towards the members of the parliament, but rather towards the commission. Europe's learning curve was very steep because the European Parliament condemned, as Mr. Kovatchev was saying, the Iranian regime's repression as early as in January 2023. So it heard what Iranian people were asking for, which was that the IRGC being the repression arm of the regime, be added to the EU terrorist list. So we were heard by the parliament as early as in January 2023, but it then took years and a major shift in Europe's threat perception for that call to translate into action. And so it really took until 29th of January 2026, so even 3 weeks after the massacres in Iran, for the council to formally list the IRGC on the 19th of February 2026. And so it's a bit of a shame that Europe is kind of missing, missing on what's happening right now. It could have a role to play. It could have a role to play in saying, for instance, in trying to make sure that the targets remain the regime targets, but it's unbearable for Iranians to be hearing, Europe saying that what should be done is find peace with the regime and continue discussions with the regime, because this is not what the Iranians want.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Shaparak. I was about asking me my second questions to each of you, but we do have questions coming from the audience. So I would and that will be also an opportunity for me to make a mix. My next questions will be to you, MEP Kovatchev, which is the following about the role of the United States in this conflict, and especially, the fact that the US has been deeply involved in the dynamics of this conflict, both directly and indirectly, whether through its foreign policy in the region, its support for allies, and its broader positioning toward the Iranian regime. And the question from Danielle from the audience is the following. Do the speakers agree it is a mistake for the US administration to think they can restart diplomacy talks with the Iranian regime? And will it prove to be the biggest mistakes of Trump's presidency? That's the question.
Well, this is something very, very dangerous, because we don't like to see the same pattern like in Venezuela, that the deputy of Maduro is now taking care about the country, and there's no freedom for the people of Venezuela. So this is very clear that a huge majority, and for my understanding, what I had as a data, that more than 80% of the population of Iran are fed up with this regime, and they don't like to see any negotiations with the regime, but a regime change. But my dear Sharak was just very right to say that member states and leaders in Europe was very afraid to say that the aim should be regime change. The aim is regime change. President of France was afraid to say this, say no, there's not the aim is not a regime change, because we don't know what will happen later, and that could be like a new Libya, and that will be a chaos, and this country will fall apart, and the Kurds will go out there, and the Azeris, etc. That they're afraid. And secondly, I don't like to repeat again France, but there are some countries who made nice deals with the regime, and they was happy to continue with the deal which they are doing with this regime. So this is why they didn't dare to say that the aim should be a regime change, and stayed only on the vague explanation that we are solidar with the people of Iran, but that's it. And this is totally not enough. You're right when you complain against the member states, not so much the Commission, but the member states, that it took so long time for the IRGC to be put on the terrorist list, and there was a high representative before Borrell looking for some legalistic excuse and prolonging the situation, because it was no unanimity in the council, or because, as I mentioned to you, the arguments behind this was that some member states didn't like to upset the regime in Tehran. So that's unfortunately the situation with the unanimity decisions which are needed in the council. And if you have one or two member states who have some other position, it's very difficult and also shameful for Europe that we are not doing also our necessary step to support the democracy and the people of Iran. Yes, directly to the questions, to the two questions, what I saw, yes, that will be a mistake to think that regime change can be done with the not the collaborators, with the leaders of the regime, and that they not regime change, but peace. So in brackets, peace can be done with this regime. And I hope very much that for the second question, how democracy can be achieved by the Iranian people who are without weapons, unarmed. That's something which, when United States and Israel started these operations, and they said A and B, they hopefully know the whole alphabet and work also with the different resistance groups, and that the regime is weakened enough that the people could be more not so afraid to take over. And I cannot give the recipe. I would love to see a change there, because the change in Iran will be a game changer, not only for the Middle East region, but for the whole world. And I see such a big link between the Kremlin regime and the regime in Tehran, and the support of the regime in Tehran again of the aggressive war of Putin in Ukraine. And you see the pattern in Europe. All the all people and political movement who support the regime in Kremlin now are very much supporting also the regime in Tehran. Also in the social media, the Putin supporters are in the same time supporter of the Ayatollahs in this regime. This is something which we observe with a big concern.
Thanks a lot, MEP Kovatchev. The next question will be for you, Shaparak, if you agree. And the next question is the following. There are growing voices questioning whether the EU can be considered a fully reliable ally in the face of a terrorist organization and non-democratic regime, and whether it consistently stands by those on the front line in addressing these threats. From your perspective, Shaparak, can the European Union be really considered a reliable ally in facing these challenges? Be careful, you have an MEP with us today.
So I will start this by saying that I'm a true admirer of Europe. I'm a partisan of Europe. I am deeply European. Okay, I'm Iranian, but I was born in Brussels. I was raised in France. My family's in Italy. I love Europe. Europe is what I am. It's part of what I am, and I value Europe. But I'm also very disappointed about Europe's lack of action in the face of violations of human rights, but not only in the face of violation of human rights. It's as though Europe is acting as if, this is an issue that doesn't concern it, that the Iran conflict is foreign policy, that it's something that's happening over there. But I think that Europe should have learned over the years that it's not over there. It's actually, and it's seeing it now because it's seeing it in relation to its pump, its supply chains, its maritime security. It's having all these impacts. But beyond that, there's also all the rest that existed before all of that's even begun. The terrorist actions that have been taken by the Iranian regime, not just against its own people, but throughout the world, including in Europe. There are so many examples of terrorist attacks against the states of Europe by the Islamic Republic. So despite all of that, Europe seems to be in a posture where it's kind of saying, let me wait and see. But that conflict is reshaping the world in very concrete ways. It's reshaping the energy, it's reshaping the inflation, it's reshaping security, it's reshaping domestic cohesion, and it's got a huge impact on anti-Semitism, as we were discussing earlier on. disinformation. It has all those impacts, and Europe cannot, just watch it happen and not take action. So I think this is basically where we're at. There is this thing which is treated as something happening out there, whereas it's actually already having a huge impact in Europe, and Europe cannot stand still. We need Europe to react, because otherwise Europe will show that it is weak and cannot be relied upon. So yes, I wish that I could say that Donald Trump was wrong when he said that Europe was I can't remember his exact words, but not a reliable ally. His words were much stronger than that. I wish I could say this is wrong, but unfortunately, it's not just a poor ally for the US and Israel. It's also not doing its job at protecting its people, because the threat is out there and it's not that far away, and it's getting closer.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shaparak, for this. So basically, we still have hope in the role of Europe in order to help in the change in the regime. Since we do see that there are like a lot of impact on the rise of anti-Semitism in Europe, and that at the Combat Antisemitism Movement we are monitoring incidents, I now would like to give the floor to Natalie Sanandaji. Natalie, who is like a Nova Festival survivor on October 2023, sorry. And I have a question for you, Natalie. Since October 7, we have seen a significant rise in anti-Semitism globally. And from your perspective, how is the current conflict fueling anti-Semitism? And how do your Iranian and Jewish identities shape now your understanding of this link? Thank you, Natalie. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Shannon. As we've seen since October of 2023, we've seen proof time and time again of anti-Semitic incidents happening all over the world, whether it be in the US or Europe, have been linked, whether physically or financially, to the IRGC, to the regime in Iran. We know that Hamas is just one of their many proxies around the Middle East, but they really have their hands way further than the Middle East. In financial terms, they have their hands in Europe, in the United States. And I feel that as someone who started speaking out very soon after October 7th, as someone who every time I would come out and speak, I would say who I am in order to represent both parts of my identity, not just my Jewish identity, but also my Iranian heritage. And as someone who has a very clear Iranian last name, I feel that I was put in a very unique position where I saw right away the stance the Iranian people had on the war, on the attacks in 2023. Majority of the love and support that I received online were from the Iranian diaspora and Iranians within Iran. A lot of the support that I received from Iranians within Iran had to be very private, because obviously we know that the regime is constantly watching everything they post, everything that they do. So a lot of that support could not be public. And because of that, most other survivors, and I would say most Jews in general, whether it be in Israel or in the United States or in Europe, did not know where the Iranian people stood in regards to this war. But truly, the Iranian people from the very beginning understood better than anyone. They were the only demographic that I did not have to explain this to. They understood better than anyone that this war was started by the IRGC and that Hamas is one of the IRGC's proxies. They understood better than anyone that we have the same enemy, that we are fighting the same enemy. And I remember a very good example of when I really realized how much I had to use my position as an Iranian Jew to explain this to the rest of the world, not just to the world in general, but also specifically to the Jewish community. I remember a very good example was when I was in Europe with other Nova survivors, and we were sitting at an Israeli restaurant, and our waiter had an Iranian accent, and I started to talk to him a little bit in Farsi. And when he walked away, the other survivors were like, oh my God, he's Iranian. Is he going to spit in our food? Does he hate us because we're Jewish, because we're Israeli? And I realized how much it was important for me to really put an emphasis of my advocacy on Iran, on the Iranian people, to explain to the rest of the world that the Iranian people are not their government and that it's quite the opposite, that they love us, they support us, and that we have the same enemy. So really, that was one of the really big turning points for me, where I took a shift in my advocacy, not just to speak about October 7th, not just to speak about anti-Semitism, but also to try to represent the Iranian people in the eyes of the rest of the world.
Thanks a lot, Natalie. That's very valuable. Thank you for your for sharing this and to try for us like to try to better understand like what's the link between both.
Thank you.
I have another question now for Shaparak and MEP Kovatchev, which is the following from Yossi. Regime change needs boots on the ground, most experts say. Do you see Israel doing it if the US stops the war and reach a deal with the Tehran regime?
Well, if I should, I think we had already answered this question before. This is something which these boots on the ground should be the Iranian people, the brave Iranian people, who should push the regime to go and to make a new possibility perspective for the Iranian people. And the actions of the United States and Israel should weaken the regime so much that they will be not able to continue killing the brave Iranians who would like to see this change, this deserved change. Since 1979, we have this barbaric regime in Tehran, and the boots on the ground. I'm not member of intelligence services of the command, the military command of the United States or nor Israel, so I cannot tell you if there is such plans for Israeli or United States actions, but the main what I talk with many resistance groups and representative of the exile Iranians is that the idea is to weaken as much as possible the regime, and that they could participate in this new Iran, and a democratic change could be possible. I hope very much that could be possible as soon as possible.
Thank you, MEP. One last question that we have is the following. Maybe you can, both of you can try to give us some of your thought on this. In 2026, which European countries do you think will welcome Iranian refugees who fled Iran?
So I mean, I don't have an answer to that. But what I do know is that all the, requests for renewals and, all the requests that were pending for asylum seekers in France have been postponed. So I first thought this is bad news. I'm not an asylum specialist, but it's actually very good news, which means no decisions will be taken at the moment about the fate of these people who are already in France and seeking asylum. My understanding is that there's Europe has been very good at offering a shelter to some Iranians who have decided for X or Y reason to leave Iran lately, and so this has been the case in Italy, that I know, because as I told you, my family's there, and I know that they have been able to welcome some of our more remote family members, and it's also been the case here in France. So this is, really something that Europe has done well and continues to be doing well. But I don't really think that is the main question at the heart of the situation, because ultimately, the idea here is not for people to be trying to find a shelter outside of Iran. what we're after is a situation where Iran is safe enough so that people can stay there, or safe enough so that I can go back there, or safe enough so that Shannon and Natalie and Andrey, I can take you there with me. And so that's really what Iranians are after. And I think that what Mr. Kovatchev was describing as being, you know, the what has been promised, at least by the US and Israel, is really what is needed in order to achieve it, i.e., they create the conditions and they weaken the regime sufficiently so that then the Iranian people can take this until the end and decide for themselves what their future ought to be shaped like. And this, but you know, they cannot do it on their own, that's for sure. They needed help. That's why they cried for help, and that's why they're getting help. But it's really crucial that Israel and the United States stay for long enough to create a situation where the regime is weak enough so that the Iranian people can, you know, achieve secular democracy, and so that's really the crucial issue right now, rather than, you know, determining whether Europe is a good place for asylum, especially because those who have stayed until now,
Yeah.
you know, they've gone through one war, they've gone through one revolution, they've survived Islamism for all these years. They're very attached and very proud of their country. And so the ones I know who have left, they didn't leave because they wanted to. They left because their parents, so, you know, I'm talking about cousins of mine, their parents were extremely concerned about their security because they're very young. They went out and protested, and, you know, as soon as they could, their parents removed them from the country to ensure that they remain alive.
Thanks a lot, Shaparak. I know that MEP Kovatchev needs to leave at 6:45 sharp, so I will maybe wrap up now. Thank you. Thank you for this insightful contributions. And what clearly emerged from tonight's discussion is that the Iran issue is not a distant geopolitical matter. It is already reshaping our societies in Europe, but we can see that there is still hope, and that we are now moving forward a Europe that is taking into consideration the importance of this conflict, and that there is still hope in the fact that Europe can be useful in this. So I can understand that the question is no longer whether Europe should act, but how decisively and how quickly it is willing to do so. Thank you again to our speaker, MEP Kovatchev from Bulgaria, Shaparak Saleh from Femme Azadi, and Natalie Sanandaji, who is working for CAM. This webinar will be available on our channel on YouTube. Thank you again for joining. Have a nice evening and be safe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.